Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Got question, Chase has got the facts. Talking NFL numbers, he's got your back. A little chart trend ball, man, he's got it like that. Chasing data by do champions. Chasing data applies to everyone. Chasing data, yeah, we're live today. Chasing data for always. Chasing data by do champions.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Chasing Data. I'm your host, Chase, obviously. And if you've been here before, this is not our first time breaking down these teams. Excuse me. We are now going to be working our way through teams 24 and 23. We've been deep diving all these teams in the offseason, working our way up from 32. We're a fourth of the way or so through the NFL for 2025. Like I said, we're going to do two teams tonight, and if you're new, we will be breaking them down, doing their additions, their subtractions, strengths, weaknesses, overall outlook for the season, cap situation, you name it. We are going over it tonight for these two teams. But before we get started, let's hear from our sponsors.
For the best Italian food in Western New York, Elliot Apollo's, call 716-825-3675. The Lardon Construction Group.
Fubo TV, the official streaming service of Do Champions. FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Do Champions.
For all your summertime needs, beauty pools, as well as kayak pools.
CX Chronicles, your total customer solutions focused manager. W.GG, the official energy drink of Do Champions.
Hey, Sons of Erie, our artwork looks better on your walls. Hamburg Brewing, please visit our tap room on Boston State Road, Hamburg, New York. And finally,
Fat Boy Surf Club for all your surfing needs.
So, like I said, we have been working our way through this offseason. Give you a little recap of where we're at now. Let's see. We are here. And we've made it through teams 32 all the way up to 25. We've got the Titans, and I update these every week. Titans, Browns, Giants, Raiders, Saints, Patriots, Panthers, and Jets. This is where they're at as of today, where I think they will be for 2025 as far as power rankings go. And it could change as the season continues, especially will change as the draft gets here. So let's get right into it. You have these up to 25. Number 24, Jacksonville Jaguars. So with Jacksonville, they went 4-13 last season. You know, currently the sports books have them at over under 6.5 wins. So maybe another tough season. First one for Liam Cohen in the gang. They started 0-4 last year. They also had a 5-game losing streak. Trent Baalke's out as a GM. James Gladstone is in. They have what is possibly the youngest staff in the NFL. They have Liam Cohen, who is 39. Their GM is 34, and their defensive coordinator is 29 years old. Sorry. Yeah. Offensive coordinator is 29. Had it backwards. Anyways, like I said, Liam Cohen is their head coach. You know, they went back and forth with what he was going to do. He started off where he was going to be staying in Tampa Bay, and then he flips the script on them overnight, ends up taking the job in Jacksonville, and things take off from there. Doug Peterson's out. He had 3 years in Jacksonville. He was 9-8, and then that last season he was 4-13. He's out the building. His time has gone. He had that great tenure in Philadelphia, but now he has greatly dropped off, especially his last year in Jacksonville. He lost the locker room and never improved from there. Cohen was offensive coordinator in Tampa Bay for just 1 year. He was third in yards per game and fourth in points per game with Tampa Bay. He came in and really changed that run game around. They struggled in the run game. He came in there and definitely put his handprint on it. But last year, the Jags were ranked 24th overall per PFF. So not the best, definitely could improve. A lot of injuries, a lot of players who were mentally out of the door already. Offensive coordinator this year is changed. Last year was Press Taylor. Now it's Grant Udinski. Comes from Minnesota, where he was the assistant offensive coordinator and assistant QB coach. And in Minnesota last year, they had a great year with Sam Darnold, where they were 9th and 12th in points and yards. Press Taylor was there last year. Offense was ranked 24th. Trevor Lawrence only played 10 games. We'll get into that more as we continue. They were 26th in points per game, just under 19 points, 25th in yards per game, 25th in completion percentage, 22nd in yards per pass, 24th in pass yards per game. And then you add that to the fact that they had 24 giveaways. There's a lot going wrong with this offense, partially due to the fact that Trevor Lawrence was injured, but nevertheless, here we are. Bring in a new defensive coordinator, Anthony Campanile. It was Ryan Nielsen, who was highly touted coming out of Atlanta when he was a DC there. He left that job to take the same job, more like a sideways jump to go to Jacksonville. With that said, their defense was bottom third, just like their offense last year, bottom third in almost every category. 27th in points allowed per game, 26th, next to last in yards per game, almost 400 yards per game allowed. 23rd in rush yards per game, last in yards per pass allowed, last in pass yards per game allowed, and had just 9 takeaways for the entire season, which was the worst in the NFL. I believe there's only been 4 teams since the merger to have 9 or fewer takeaways for a season, so absolutely god-awful. The new defensive coordinator was the linebacker coach and run game coordinator in Green Bay last year, and they were 6th and 5th in points per game and yards per game. So we'll look at their additions. I got a little key additions right here. We'll go through a few more, though. First person you see on the right side is De'Ami Brown, who comes over from the Washington Commanders. Get him on a 1-year, $10 million contract. He had a career year last year, which is not saying much because the bar was low, to say the least. 30 receptions, 300-plus yards, 1 touchdown. But the thing for me is that he can show his versatility. They finally got an offensive coordinator and a quarterback in Washington that was able to get something out of De'Ami Brown. So see what happens. Good addition to this wide receiver room. They already have Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr., but we'll dive into that more in just a moment. Secondly, Patrick McCarry. As a Ravens fan, this guy is a Swiss Army knife on the offensive line. He's basically plug and play, put him wherever you want on that offensive line, and he's going to help you out. Get him on a 3-year, $38 million contract, which is 19th on average value for 2025 amongst offensive linemen, which is ideal to say the least, in my opinion. Not pictured here is Jordan Lewis, who they get for 3 years, $30 million. He will more than likely be the starting nickel DB in this defense. It moves Jarrian Jones to the outside where he played mostly in college on the boundary. So a good addition for this defense. They had so many holes that anything helps at this point. So continuing on with the additions, I did another episode where I did their offseason moves and ranked every team 1 through 32 based on their offseason moves through free agency. This was 2 weeks ago. So all the 99% of the free agency moves had been made. The Jaguars were ranked 29th because they really didn't do anything. They lost some players, got rid of some players. They're trying to implement that new offensive scheme that they see with Liam Cohen and James Gladstone as the GM. So we'll see what happens. So with their mock draft, first off, I have them taking, they have so many needs, but need number 1, defensive lineman, Mason Graham out of Michigan. He's got short arms, but everything else is great. He's fast and violent. He's a 3-tech, going to be probably successful in a 4-3 front. Can't go wrong if you get him at 5. Kind of curious to see what happens early on in that draft because we're assuming Cam Ward goes 1. Then what are the Browns going to do? Are they taking Shador at 2? If they don't take Shador, are the Giants taking Shador at 3? I would think Mason Graham more than likely is going to be there at 5. If you don't want him, you could take Will Campbell. It's still going to be great talent at 5, no doubt. Second round, shoring up that secondary. They were last in pass yards per game. Have them taking Trey Amos. He has size and movement skills, coverage scheme versatility, and I mean he's CB2. At his floor is CB2, I should say. He could easily be CB1. Third round, have them taking tight end out of LSU, Mason Taylor. He's more of a weapon that will be a tight end 1 in this offense. Obviously need tight end production after getting rid of letting Evan Ingram go, cut him. He goes to Denver. Also in the third round, I have them taking a safety, Kevin Winston, again, shoring up that secondary, which was maybe their biggest issue in 2024. He could have been a first-round pick in 2023, but then he had the injuries, but he's still very athletic. Fourth round, I have them taking wide receiver Isaiah Bond out of Texas. Speed for sure, but he needs to do more than run vertical routes. Another weapon for Trevor Lawrence. Fourth round again, have them taking Lampkin, the guard out of North Carolina. He's a guard, as listed here, but his size could put him back at center, so I'd be curious to see if wherever he does go, where he ends up on that offensive line. Fifth round, Zai Alexander out of LSU, another DB. They got to shore up this defense. 4 of their first 6 picks, I believe, have him. 5 of their first 7. He's not as athletic as you want, so he may be limited to zone coverage or maybe even moving him back to safety. See what happens. Then you go on down this draft, another defensive interior player. Is Trevor Lawrence the future? Brady Cook is there in the 6th round, so you may want to take a flyer on him. Bring someone else in as the backup. They currently have Nick Mullins as the backup. Mac Jones is out. And lastly, another safety. So subtractions. Let's look at their depth chart here. They traded away Christian Kirk. They were going to release him. They end up getting a 7th rounder for him from the Houston Texans within the division. They trade him away. He only had 27 receptions, less than 400 yards, and 1 touchdown in 8 games last year. He was injured. So they try to get a little bit of something out of him. Moving on, changing the scheme up. Along with that, like I said, they got rid of they cut Evan Ingram at the tight end position, saved $6 million by letting him go. He did have a down season from where he was in years prior with Trevor Lawrence. He had 47 receptions, 365 yards, and just 1 touchdown. Also get rid of Josh Reynolds. Save $4 million. He gets signed today, I believe, by the Jets. So not many cuts. You know, they didn't really lose much here with this team. So continuing on, we'll go into their strengths. And keep the depth chart here. When you look at this roster, I mean, what really is a strength that stands out to you? There's not like a ton that stands out to me. Having Trevor Lawrence back, is that a strength? Potentially. I mean, he had 11 touchdowns, 7 interceptions last year. Like I said, he played 10 games. But the bad part, I mean, 7 interceptions, obviously bad. You know, he's had, like, the last 2 years, he's had issues holding on to the ball, whether that be turning it over in the air or just fumbling it. A minus 22 total EPA and an 85.2 passer rating. Not ideal from the guys you're paying as much as you are. Having a new head coach is possibly a strength. Brian Thomas Jr. as a weapon is definitely a strength. I mean, he's definitely a strength of this team. I said it was hard to find some, but he's definitely one as a wide receiver 1. In his rookie season, 87 receptions, almost 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, plus 106 yards after completion over expected. So definitely did some stuff for them in the pass game. Okay. Tank Bigsby's emergence, possible strength. You know, we're trying kind of reaching to try to find these strengths at this point. But like I said, plus 126 rush yards over expected, which ranks where? That ranks 16th among all running backs last year. And in his rush yards over expected per attempt, which was plus 0.07, that ranks 8th amongst all qualifying running backs last year. So he's maybe a hidden gem for the Jacksonville Jaguars team going into 2025. With that said, they do have ETN, but I still think they could still draft someone else for depth on this team. ETN's probably gone after this year. Defensive line, potential strength. They have Josh Hines Allen, who had 8 sacks last year. Trayvon Walker, the former number 1 overall pick, 10.5 sacks, 127 pressures between the two of them. So solid to say the least. Run D was decent last year. They were 6th in rush yards over expected with minus 20, negative 36. Sorry, Devin Lloyd, you could say he's potentially a strength. 113 tackles, 2 sacks. But like I said, there's not anything outside of Brian Thomas, maybe this defensive line, these 2 players on the defensive line that are just outstanding for this team. Their ability to protect the quarterback is a plus. I wouldn't necessarily say a strength. They had the 5th lowest quarterback pressure percentage at 27.4, 3rd fewest pressures at 166. So, I mean, it's definitely not a weakness. They had the 7th fewest sacks at 32. Are they bringing back Brandon Scherf? I mean, he's a free agent. I mean, there's a possibility they could still bring him in, especially for depth on this offensive line. Cohen and Gladstone have come out and said that they have emphasized wanting to bolster this offensive line. So I'm curious to see how that goes. They did bring in Makari, who's the Swiss Army knife for this offensive line, and Hainsey, who will likely play center for this team. And then they bring in another guy as a swing tackle or for depth. You know, I mean, see what happens. Weaknesses on this team. They do have some weaknesses. Obviously, on the defensive side of the ball, the secondary, Jordan Lewis may be the best player in the secondary, which is not saying much for this team. Their their defense in general was just bad overall. They had the 2nd worst EPA per play at plus 0.09, which means they were giving up 0.09 points, expected points added on every play of the season. 2nd worst in the league. Most pass yards allowed at 257.4 per game. And what strikes me with that number is they had the 2nd most pass yards per game allowed, and they were a team that was always behind this season. So why were they giving up so many more pass yards when teams would have been running the ball on them in these situations? Plus 0.14 EPA per pass allowed, which was the worst in the NFL. Run D, I mean, like I said, you know, not the greatest. Bottom 10 in quarterback pressures, 3rd lowest sack percentage at just 5.2, and the most yards after a catch allowed in the NFL, 2,429. So once they allowed someone to catch the ball, which they did a lot of, they then also could not tackle the players. So not ideal on the defensive side of the ball. So that's the majority of the weaknesses for this team. Another weakness is just their ability to move the ball in general. But hopefully, in my opinion, that will be solved whenever they bring in. They have the new offensive coordinator and Liam Cohen, who is basically calling the plays, you know, running the show as far as the offense goes. So we'll see what happens with them. As far as an outlook for this team, just a general overview, the team is definitely in a conundrum, and they and the other team that I'm going to be discussing tonight could be flipped. Their seasons are pretty much a toss-up to me. I don't know what is going to happen with them. What is Trevor Lawrence going to be? I mean, he's pretty much an unknown at this point. You know, he was so highly touted coming out of Clemson to be one of the top quarterback prospects, a generational talent to some people, and he has not performed to what they expected him to do, to say the least. So we'll see what happens. I feel like this is a make it or break it year for him. What is Liam Cohen going to be? I mean, he was great in Tampa Bay, but is that going to carry over into Jacksonville? We will see. Can this D be any better? I mean, it's kind of hard to be as bad as they were last year. So pretty low bar for them. I don't think that Jacksonville is necessarily paying for the AFC South, but they and the Indianapolis Colts, who will be the next team, are definitely playing for a wild card position more than likely when this division is so bad that the Texans and a second team can just beat up on the other 2 teams easily. So let's look at their cap situation. And a generalized overview of their offseason. They have $276 million committed right now, which ranks 20th for 2025. $29 million still in cap space, so about midway in the NFL. Still got money to spend if they wanted to. They currently don't really have any bad contracts like a lot of teams that were ranked below them. No one really stands out to being a high cap hit and being a negative player on this team. They do have $58 million in dead cap, though, which is spread between Brandon Scherf, Christian Kirk, and Evan Ingram, who all have $13 million each dead cap. And then Roy Robertson Harris, who has an $8 million dead cap hit. So a pretty big number as far as cap goes. And like I said, I have here, what to watch for. Our team's still intact for 2025. what's going to happen with the running back room. They still have a lot of key players. They lose Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, but that was on their own volition to get rid of them. So curious to see what they do going forward. Going into their schedule, as you know, if you've seen any other previous episodes with their schedule, we don't really know it yet. We know who their opponents are going to be. Schedule will be released in the upcoming months of the offseason. But as of now, we have no idea when they play these teams. We just know when their home and away games are. So going through them, they play Kansas City. So we're just taking them at face value based on who they're playing. What does it look like for now with these rosters? Kansas City, not looking good. Chargers, possible. Justin Herbert has no one to throw to. The Rams, probably not. Seattle, if Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen could get to the quarterback, which we know that they can, that offensive line is god-awful in Seattle, so that's a potential win. The Jets, they're ranked below them. It's definitely going to be dependent on what Justin Fields does in that system, even though his offensive coordinator in New York was the pass game coordinator for Jared Goff, which is two totally different quarterbacks whenever you look at the two. Carolina, potential win for sure. It's just the Jags are hit or miss for this season, so it's going to be kind of iffy. Houston Texans, we'll talk about them more in a minute. I don't think they win that game, though. Indy, I can see them splitting it with them. Titans, they should win. So when you go to their away schedule, they have the same divisional opponents. Say they win one of those three. Arizona, probably not. Cincinnati, probably not. San Francisco, probably not. The Raiders, potential for sure there. And then finishing that up with the Broncos, a team that's definitely looking to take that next leap to go into the next tier of the AFC and be in that upper echelon of teams in the AFC. So when you look at the schedule, I'm predicting 7 wins, which is right above their projection for these sports books at 6.5. So I'll be curious to see what truly happens with them as the season goes on. A lot of this is going to be when they play who and all the other things that I've mentioned already thus far. Top players on this team. Let's go back to the depth chart. Top players in general. Brian Thomas Jr. used to think it would be Trevor Lawrence. I don't think it's going to be Trevor Lawrence, but that is still a toss-up. If anybody's going to get anything out of him, it's going to be Liam Cohen. Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, top players for sure. You want to consider Devin Lloyd? It's up to you. So with each team, I go through and I try to find who could be an MVP candidate, Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year. Kind of hard to find one on this team. Currently, the best odds is Trevor Lawrence at plus 4,500. I don't think it's happening. I don't think there's anyone that could be Offensive Player of the Year for sure. Defensive Player of the Year, Josh Hines-Allen at plus 6,000, which seems like he would be more likely to win Defensive Player of the Year than Trevor Lawrence winning MVP. Most improved player, along the same lines, Trevor Lawrence. He is the one who has the most to prove, so he has to improve for the Jags to do anything in the AFC South for 2025. He's in that, like I said, he's in that new Liam Cohen system. I expect a lot of motion out of that system, get players on the move. He's from that Sean McVay tree. He did a lot of great things for the run game in Tampa Bay, so I expect the same thing for Jacksonville, which will help open up the pass game for Trevor Lawrence in 2025. So he definitely should be most improved or has the most to prove also. So to summarize what we got going on for the Jags, the best outcome for this team is Trevor Lawrence shows up and shows why he got the contract that he did, why he was the number 1 pick. He becomes a top 10, 12 quarterback for 2025, which is not out of the realm of possibility. We've seen the flashes, but we've also seen all the lows of what he's done over the years in the NFL. They figure out a 1-2 punch with ETN and Tank Bigsby, or either draft somebody else to shore up that running back room under Liam Cohen. Brian Thomas Jr. becomes a top 10 wide receiver if he's not already with a competent quarterback. The defense climbs out of the slums of the NFL and becomes maybe the 20th best in the league. Liam Cohen is a much better coach than Doug Peterson, which is not hard to say based on what he did in Jacksonville. And then CJ Stroud and the Texans are just god awful. You know, their issues with their offensive line. They basically shipped out the entire offensive line. And if that happens and all these things that I just mentioned right now, there's a scenario where the Jags are fighting for the AFC South title. I mean, I don't believe it's really out of the realm of possibility. The Texans were 10-7 last year, I believe, somewhere around that. I mean, the Jags could easily get to 10-7, especially with all these scenarios that I'm playing out. This is the realistic thing, best case scenario. Worst case scenario, Trevor Lawrence ends up being discussed, I guess, kind of like Russell Wilson in the sense of that contract that they gave him. I mean, he's better than Daniel Jones, but another horrible contract. And he has another down year, and they try to move on from him. Liam Cohen had a better situation in Tampa Bay. Trevor Lawrence is just not fixable. Brian Thomas Jr., I don't think there's no negative scenario for him. I mean, I think he's a given in this offense that he's going to be great. The defense is still horrible. They're bottom 3-4 in the league. They just don't improve. The thing with the worst case scenario for the Jaguars is the fact that I feel like the floor is higher for them than any other team that is ranked below them. There are 8 teams below them, and I believe that the floor is lower for them than the Jacksonville Jags. I mean, 5-12 is probably the floor, but their ceiling's just not as high as other teams ranked above them. So worst case scenario, 5-12, 6-11. But with all that said, my expectation for this team is Trevor Lawrence is around 12th to 15th as a quarterback. Brian Thomas Jr. is top 15 wide receiver for sure. The defense can't be any worse than what it was before. They move on from ETN in a sense, and they focus more on Tank Bigsby being the 3-down running back for this team. They're 100% fighting for the wild card. The sense of urgency in the building is there versus years past with Mac Jones under center, Doug Peterson as the coach. And they will finish anywhere between 7-10, 9-8. That's what I expect from this team. And they're just trying to build a situation for the future. So as we start to wrap up this team, you know, there's still the possibility that there's drop-off candidates for them. And to me, the drop-off candidate could easily be Travis Etienne. He had just 3.7 yards per carry and minus 41 rush yards over expected. So not ideal. Same for Gabe Davis. They signed him to basically the same money as Saquon Barkley got 2 years ago, or last year, I should say. Gabe Davis, 10 games, 20 receptions, 200-plus yards, and just 2 touchdowns. So not ideal out of who is basically, I mean, is he wide receiver 2 in this offense? One could argue that. X factor for this team that makes the best and worst case scenarios flip-flop is Liam Cohen, James Gladstone. Are they as good as people expect them to be? We shall see. Outside of Trevor Lawrence, I mean, he's obvious X factor, but can they scheme up something to do better with this offense, but also the defensive coordinator? I mean, it's just so much going on that could flip this season for this team. So curious to see what happens with them. Can you discuss Indianapolis trading Alec Pierce for a 4th-round pick? Is this a hypothetical, or did something happen over the last 30 minutes of me streaming? I'm about to get into the Indianapolis Colts, so we will discuss their wide receiver room, and we'll come back to Alec Pierce momentarily. So, a little hint there that we're going to number 23, which is the Indianapolis Colts. So, I mean, well, I guess we can go ahead and go discuss the wide receiver thing. Let me see. Something happened with them. Hypothetical. They should trade him to Buffalo. Yeah, I mean, big play threat, as we've seen with Anthony Richardson and Alec Pierce connecting on those huge plays last year. I want to say he had around like 21 yards per reception or something crazy like that. Would I trade a 4th-round pick for him? Absolutely. in a heartbeat. I mean, let's see. I want to get the exact on that number first, if that's what I read was him. Yeah, average air yards per target last year was 21 and a half. So he's going into his 4th year. I believe he's probably in yards per reception, 22.3. So yeah, definitely a big play guy for the Colts last year. So with that, all that said, they won't get more than that even in a comp pick situation. True. So yes, if I'm the Buffalo Bills, I'd definitely trade for him if I'm Buffalo, for the obvious reason that they need, in my opinion, more weapons. You have Khalil Shakir, who's underneath threat. Keon Coleman, physical at the catch point, but has he panned out to the way that they thought he would? You hear some yeses, you hear some nos. I would say no, but get Josh Allen more weapons. I mean, obviously the Bills are all in right now for their championship Super Bowl window, so go out and get it. Do you do it if you are the Colts? I would say yes. You have Mitchell that you had last year as a rookie who underperformed, I guess. You give him more of a opportunity. Your quarterback play already wasn't the best between Anthony Richardson. Joe Flacco has some flashes for sure. They bring in Daniel Jones, so I don't know if you want to know anything better. Alec Pierce is going into his 4th year. They have Michael Pittman. I don't know. You almost, if you're the Colts, you want extra chances in the draft, because they are nearing that scenario of being a team that needs to take one step back to take 2 steps forward, because they are not competing for anything in the AFC anytime soon, because they obviously do not have a quarterback. So do they just hit the reset button? Possibly. So I would trade him if I was the Colts, in my opinion. So going forward, going back, let's go back to the Colts. Like I said, I had them ranked 23rd last season, 8-9. So 3 wins better than the Jags. These two teams, I have them ranked together, basically 24 and 23, because I feel like they could flip-flop. Their seasons could really go in a lot of different directions. Their win projection for 2025 is 6.5. That's the current line for them. So they are right there with the Jags at 6.5. A lot of issues. Everybody knows the quarterback situation. They were up and down all last season, the 4th straight season with no playoffs. 3 of those 4 seasons, they've either had 8 or 9 wins. So like I said, they're this mediocre team that can't get over the hump because they seem to have missed on Anthony Richardson. So do they take a step back in 2025 to reset going forward, going into 2026? Should they? Potentially, but are they? Probably not, because they have Shane Steichen, who is in his 3rd year and is probably, I wouldn't say on the hot seat yet, but the seat's getting warm for sure. The seat is definitely getting warm. They were in the playoff hunt last year. I mean, they had the whole scenario with Anthony Richardson being the starter. Looked better early in the preseason, then throws that pick 6 at like his own 10-yard line, just completely misreads it. He still is horrible with the short passes. His accuracy is the biggest issue, which is what scares me with him. Obviously, he's a freak athlete, but the athleticism can only get you so far when you can't throw an accurate ball. I mean, there's other things you can fix as a quarterback, but if you are inaccurate from the jump, you have not shown any flashes of improvement in your 2 years, then what is there to look for with this quarterback? Anyways, kind of went on a tangent. We'll come back to that. They were in the playoff hunt last year until week 17, where they were probably at least a touchdown favorite or more against the lowly New York Giants, who are still ranked 30th in this. Could move them up maybe a spot with Russell Wilson coming in, Jameis Winston. No, we'll reconsider that for next week. But they were in the playoff hunt. Colts were in the playoff hunt in week 17. they go and let Drew Lock and Malik Neighbors go absolutely insane. They put up 40 points or something like that, and basically lose their chance at the playoffs. I mean, quite embarrassing if you're a Colts fan. Shane Steichen is still there, like I mentioned earlier. His offense has ranked 13th and 14th in yards per game and points per game in the last 2 years, which is better than what I thought. I mean, you think about this team and the struggles they've had at the quarterback position. They have had Jonathan Taylor, who did have somewhat of a down year last year. How much of that is due to the fact that they have no passing threat per se? Whatever. But they were ranked 18th by PFF standards. If you're worried about PFF, I don't know about that, though. The offensive coordinator is the best name in the business, Jim Bob Cooter. You don't hear much about him because it's all about Shane Steichen anyways. He's entering his third season with Shane Steichen. Pass game was ranked 26th. Run game was ranked 30th somehow. They scored 22 points per game, which was average, 335 yards per game, average, 4.7 yards per carry, which was, I mean, good. 56% completion percentage, worse than NFL. Like I said, Anthony Richardson cannot pass the ball if his life depended on it. And his career is starting to depend on it going into 2025. 198 pass yards per game. Like I said, pass game is the problem here. 29 giveaways, which was the third worst in the NFL. Not good. They bring in Lou Anarumo, Big Lou, from Cincinnati, who was, a very hot name going back 2-3 years ago as far as defensive coordinators go. All those rankings on offense are reflections of how bad the quarterback play is. Team has a lot of talent, for sure. That is going to be a focal point of what I think about with the Colts is their glaring issue, and their glaring issue being the most important thing for any team to succeed is the quarterback. So, like I said, it's Big Lou. Great few years in Cincinnati. Terrible year last year. It was Gus Bradley last year in Indianapolis. They were 24th in points per game allowed, 29th in yards per game allowed, bottom third in the league in third down, fourth down, red zone percentage, 132 rush yards per game allowed, which was the bottom third, second to last in completion percentage, pass yards per game, fifth worst. I mean, it's just so many bad categories on this defense. And going back to Big Lou, who is now in Indianapolis, he was defensive coordinator in Cincinnati. They had the worst defense for one of the best offenses in NFL history. That was the worst defense for a great offense in NFL history, probably. The thing with Lou Anarumo is that his defensive scheme is very complex, to simplify it. And he has more veterans here, I would say, going into Indy. When they try to bring in the young players in Cincinnati, that's where they ran into more issues, I feel, with his defensive scheme that he had in Cincinnati. That system, it ended up spiraling downward last year. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong for his defense in 2025. So looking at their additions, I had them ranked, I want to say, around 16th in off-season moves. They've made some solid ones, definitely to shore up that secondary, and we'll get right into that. Obviously, you see Cam Bynum listed on the top left right there. 4-year, $60 million contract, which is 10th in average value. Last year in Minnesota, and Brian Flores' scheme, he had 3 interceptions and allowed lower than a 63 passer rating for the season. How much of that is due to him playing in that scheme with Brian Flores? You see the likes of Andrew Van Ginkel come into Brian Flores' scheme and become a Pro Bowler. Great improvement. So I'm curious to see how much of that is based on the scheme and what he can do in Indianapolis. Pictured on the right side is Charvarius Ward, 3-year, $54 million. Last year was probably the worst year of his career. I've said it in other episodes, especially when I was talking about the offseason rankings. last year was a write-off for me for Charvarius Ward. He come out and he spoke openly about how him losing his daughter in San Francisco affected him for the home games in San Francisco. Basically, whenever he was at that field, his mind was not on the game. His mind was on her. So I looked for him to be in a new location, new headspace, possibly bounce back to where he was 2 and 3 years ago. 13th in average value going into 2025. I'll take it because that number is just going to be lower and lower as the contract goes on. Possibly the most interesting addition of this team. I mean, they might could top it in the draft based on what they do, but as of right now, it is definitely the leader in the clubhouse with Daniel Jones coming in on a 1-year, $14 million. And I want to say he can earn up to 18 million with incentives. That is definitely one of the more intriguing storylines going into 2025, especially in the quarterback rooms across the NFL. Daniel Jones got his money in New York. Probably shouldn't have paid him, but they did. And I mean, this is going to be very interesting because Anthony Richardson going into the offseason, everybody thought, he's going to be the starter. They got to give him another year. But they have basically brought Daniel Jones in to be what I feel is the bar for Anthony Richardson. In a vacuum, if you say, Anthony Richardson, if you cannot be better than Daniel Jones as a quarterback in the NFL, you cannot be the quarterback of our team, much less the face of the franchise going forward. You cannot be the quarterback of our team if you cannot beat Daniel Jones. I feel like he's the perfect quarterback to set the bar for that if you're considering moving on, because Daniel Jones he was Danny Dimes at one point, but the lows definitely outweigh the highs of Daniel Jones's career. Also, interestingly, he's a dual threat quarterback. And Shane Steichen, whenever he came from Philadelphia, I expected to see that more in Indianapolis. I was wondering if Indianapolis would possibly go after Justin Fields, did not, or maybe they did, but Justin Fields took the $30 million guarantee to go to New York. So it's going to be interesting. Daniel Jones is there. Can't wait to see how that plays out. Richardson wins the starting job, but gets hurt before week 6. Daniel Jones comes in and leads him to a division title. Yeah, that's definitely a hot take. Not wishing injury. Yeah, obviously. So, that would 100% save Shane Steichen's job. Anthony Richardson would be traded in the offseason for, I don't know, mid-round pick, 3rd, 4th, 5th Trey Lance deal whenever he went to the Cowboys, because his career would be over if he doesn't get hurt. All right, say it's week 6. They've played 5 games. What would the record have to be for Anthony Richardson to have a chance in Indy for 2026? Through 5 games, I would say he would have to show at least a 5% improvement in accuracy numbers. He was low 50s? He would have to be at least mid 50s, high 50s in that regard. And at least 2 and 3. And I say 2 and 3 record, and the defense is horrible. Say they're putting up 28 points per game at 2 and 3 with him under center. Yeah, he would have a chance to come back for that 4th year and them take another ride with him. But if Daniel Jones leads them to the division title, I don't know if it matters what Anthony Richardson does unless he starts 5-0 and then Daniel Jones comes in. But again, another interesting point and highlight of what's going to happen in Indianapolis this year. I feel like every year Indy is kind of a team that's, a Central America team that not Central America down south, but in the middle of America, middle of the United States. And they're not really ever talked about a lot, maybe just because they've been a mid team for so long. Whatever. We'll see what happens. So going into their mock draft, going back to that hypothetical trade for a 4th round pick, they do not have the largest load of picks going into this draft. They have just 7. I mean, they could have more. I mean, it's one per round, so I mean, whatever. But so with this mock draft that I did simultaneously with the Jags mock draft, I have them taking edge player James Pierce in the first round at 14. They could easily take a tight end. All right, if Tyler Warren is still there at 14, they are 100% taking him because outside of quarterback, tight end is probably their biggest need on this team right now. Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones obviously need more weapons too. So James Pierce at 14, he was tied for the most sacks in the SEC 2 years ago in 2023. Very quick, can close. He can work back inside when necessary. Just adds to that defensive line. They did lose Deo Odeyingbo to free agency to the Chicago Bears, so kind of replacing him. Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner are both going to be 31, I believe, going into the season. So trying to get the front four a little bit younger. Second round, have them taking the linebacker out of UCLA. He's a lightweight linebacker, but he's speedy and smart. And I've said this in previous episodes, linebacker is kind of a position that's more of a guess than other positions in the NFL. I mean, in the draft, I should say, because the college game is just so different, in my opinion, than what is going on in the NFL. And I say that because I'm trying to say, the hashes are different. They're much wider in college. You see formations that are totally different that you would never see in the NFL. So if you can get a player that is athletic and intelligent, I feel like you can teach them more of the NFL game, and they are more likely to be a hit for the NFL transitioning from college to NFL. And they need linebacker play in Indianapolis. So, moving on to the third round, I have them getting that tight end that they so desperately need on this offense, Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon. He's more of a receiving tight end, which is exactly what they need. I mean, I'm going to talk about the tight ends in a minute. Huge hole in this offense last year and even bigger hole now. Fourth round, Jalen Rivers, the tackle out of Miami. He's technically sound, but he's not an athlete, but could use more on that offensive line. Fifth round, Billy Bowman Jr., the safety out of Oklahoma. He's a versatile defender. You just got to work with his tackling woes. Sixth round is where it gets a little more interesting. If Kyle McCord is still there in the sixth round, you definitely want to take him, in my opinion. He's got that gunslinger mentality. He's more Joe Flacco, I guess. I don't know how to explain him. But with the current quarterback situation that they have, I would not be surprised if they take a late round pick on a quarterback to try and develop. Because who knows if either of QB 1 or 2 that is currently on this roster will be on the team for 2026. And then finishing up with a late round running back. It's always good to take a late round running back. You see how many of these late round running backs are so productive in the NFL. You hear about so many 5th, 6th, 7th rounders becoming starters in year 1, 2, 3, cheap, great player. So take a flyer. All right, looking at their depth chart. A little cut off, but it's okay. They lost their guard who went to the Minnesota Vikings, who gets that 5-year, $80 million contract. Ryan Kelly's gone. This is why I had them taking offensive lineman in the draft. Deo Adeyingbo is gone. Like I said, he went to Chicago. They lose Julian Blackman in the secondary. It was his worst season as a Colt, but he was also injured. So how much of that is him being really bad? They lose Joe Flacco. We've talked about the quarterbacks to a large extent at this point. They lose Mo Alley Cox, their tight end. I mean, he's just been meh for the last few years. EJ Speed, linebacker. Lose him. So they still have Zaire Franklin, but he needs to take a step up for sure. So that's who they lost. Looking at the strengths of this team, having Jonathan Taylor in the backfield in general is a strength for me. You remember, was that 3 years ago when he was he Offensive Player of the Year? Am I remembering that correctly? When he had the rushing title, I want to say. But last year he was 6th in yards per carry at 4.7, 8th in rush yards per game at this is the team, 137. Or no, that was him. Right? Yeah. 7th in touchdowns. No, this is the team. Sorry, I'm getting confused here. They had 64 explosive run plays. The strength is in the fact also that the pass game can only improve. God awful last year. Joe Flacco had some flashes, but overall, the pass game has to improve. They do have weapons. When you look at these wide receivers that could improve, we talked about Alec Pierce. Last year, he had 37 receptions, 800 yards, and 7 touchdowns. So, I mean, would you say he was their best receiver last year? Potentially. So that's kind of the only argument about keeping him, because when you look at this wide receiver room, they have 4 guys that could take the next step to be a wide receiver 1. I mean, do you say Michael Pittman is probably that wide receiver 1 right now? Yeah, I guess. But I mean, this is their stats last year. Alec Pierce, 37, 824, and 7. Michael Pittman, 69, 808, and 3. Josh Downs, 72, 803, and 5. Mitchell, 23, 312, and 0. So they have like 3 players who all had 800 yards. They had 3, 5, and 7 touchdowns. So all these players, basically with their numbers, produced around the same amount. I mean, their catch rate over expected, 3.8%, -1%, -3%. So Alec Pierce, I mean, a lot of his statistics, his receiving EPA was the highest of the 4, I should say. But they need someone to take that next step. Michael Pittman looked like he may have been doing that a year or 2 ago and just hasn't yet. But how much of that is on him and how much of that is on the quarterback play? Quentin Nelson, pair him with the tackle. I mean, Quentin Nelson only allowed 3 sacks and almost 1,100 snaps, which is more than ideal. 2 top 15 defensive interior players on the defensive side, and DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. Buckner had 6.5 sacks. They had 112 stops between the 2 of them. A stop is a tackle that's made at or behind the line of scrimmage. So 112 between the 2, outstanding. Add in their first-round pick last year, who was he the first defensive player in Latu? Going at 14 or 15, it was that run of offensive players in the draft last year. But as of right now, they have 4 true defensive tackles on the roster. They're probably a bottom 5 unit when either one of these players is not on the field in Grover Stewart or DeForest Buckner. So they have to add depth to that position and add more to get a little bit younger probably too. Weaknesses on this team, their ability to tackle, their situation of not having a quarterback, which is a given of that being a weakness for them. They had a negative 44.1 total EPA from Anthony Richardson and a negative 11.1 completion percentage over expected. So on passes he was expected to complete, he was 11% lower than what he should have been on those said passes. Like I said, accuracy is the issue with this guy. As far as tight ends go, they basically don't have one. The starter right now is Drew Ogletree. Behind him, Jelani Woods. I mean, you look at this whole list of tight end depth is god-awful. The leading tight end last year had the stat line of 14 receptions, 182 yards, and 0 touchdowns. That was the best line for a tight end on the Colts last year. Huge area of need, as you can see. The tight ends were abysmal. I mean, if you just want to put it in one word, they were absolutely abysmal at pass-catching threats last year. Between the 4 tight ends that played last year, they had 39 catches. 39 between the 4 tight ends. Again, quarterback play was horrible, but 39 catches from tight end room is absolutely unacceptable. Them not having, a wide receiver 1 is kind of a weakness. They have all those players, but like I said, need somebody to step up, et cetera, et cetera. They had next to worst yards after catch for the season. They did have the big plays to Alec Pierce. You remember those from Anthony Richardson. He could hit the deep ball whenever he threw it, but you had to get there first. They had the 5th worst average separation at 3.3 yards. Not good. Defense in general should be better with the names that you see listed here. I mean, they've had these names that were highly touted talents at one point in their career. Kwity Paye, I remember him just a few years ago looking great. Latu. I always mispronounce that. I mean, Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner, Samson Ebukam is not a horrible name. Zaire Franklin, Nick Cross, Kenny Moore II. Now they add in Charvarius Ward and Cam Bynum. They should have a mediocre defense at worst. But last year they were 4th in yards per game allowed at 360 plus, 7th most pass yards per game, 4th most receiving yards over expected at positive 405. I mean, they're just giving up more than what they should based on the scenarios and the teams that they were playing last year. Outlook for this team. This was the perfect episode to do them and the JAX together because they are both conundrums of a team, to say the least. They have so many ifs, ands, buts, things that's holding them back. What could hold them back? What could project them forward for 2025? I'm assuming that Anthony Richardson does not take that huge leap. Daniel Jones is not a true answer. Steichen is getting on the warm seat, not necessarily the hot seat. If this season goes south really quick, could they be resetting by midseason? If they're 1-5, do they take a step back and say, hey, this is not happening. It's not working. Do they get rid of Steichen at that point? Do they get rid of Anthony Richardson at that point? I don't know what his value would be if they're 1-5, but do they finally say, hey, we need to take a step back to take a step forward? I don't know. Can this D be any better? A lot of question marks are for what they should be. And like I said earlier, I don't think that they or Jacksonville are necessarily playing for the AFC South, but both could be definitely playing for that last wild card position based on the fact that they play in the AFC South. Teams are not great in the AFC South. I would be highly surprised if the Jags, the Colts, and the Texans are all above average teams. Titans are not going to be. So with their cap situation in Indy, they have $283 million committed, which is the 12th most. They still have $22 million in cap space, so they could make another signing. We will get into the free agents in a moment, but, I mean, there's not a lot of talent still left out there. They have the least dead cap in the NFL, which is a positive, at just $3 million. The only questionable contract, whenever I dug through the roster, is Daniel Jones. I mean, paying him $14 million guaranteed. But, I mean, they're trying. That's just a pay him to see if Anthony Richardson is good. DeForest Buckner had one of the top contracts at $26 million. Michael Pittman, $23 million. I mean, he was putting up good numbers over the last few years. Just needs to be better. I mean, do they cut Ebukam? I don't know. Potentially, I think he has like $8 or $9 million that they could save between Samson Ebukam, Tyquan Lewis, and there was one more. Who was it? Oh, there's one more. They made. I don't know. There was 3 players that had 1.5 sacks. The combined 3 of them, but they could save like $19 million if they cut all 3 in cap space. Definitely need to retool on the defensive line. Looking at their schedule, again, don't know when they're going to play these people. Just know that they are going to play them. Jacksonville. Said earlier, they probably split the season series when you're looking at the home games. Houston, depends on that defensive line, could split that series. Titans, they could win for sure. Falcons, a lot of question marks in Atlanta. Mostly around the quarterback and the defense. Denver, already spoke about them being better. Las Vegas, Arizona, potentially. San Francisco, probably not. Miami, probably not. Then when you look at the away schedule, 3 divisional opponents. Pittsburgh, who currently does not have a quarterback. So if they go into the season with Mason Rudolph, which I highly doubt, then they could win. Kansas City, no. Chargers, no. Rams, no. Seattle, potentially. So you're looking at 6 or 7 wins just on paper right now, which is, I mean, I would say that's about right for a team that's ranked 23rd in the league. 6 and 11 is probably what your expected schedules to be. 6.5 is the projection on sports books over under. So we will see what happens. You know, the top players on this team, just as a general overview, is Jonathan Taylor, Quentin Nelson, DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart. Could you throw one or both or neither of Cam Bynum and Travarius Ward in there? Sure. And if you were somehow able to compile all 3 of their top receivers into one, that would be a top player on this team. But they all are still at that mid-tier of wide receiver play. And like I discussed with the Jags, trying to find a offensive or defensive player of the year on this team, the best I could think of and find was Jonathan Taylor at plus 4,000. If they get top 20 quarterback play out of either one of their quarterbacks, plus 4,000 is pretty good for me to take it for Jonathan Taylor. Most improved, also Jonathan Taylor. Had the worst greatest season of his career per PFF. I mean, he was ranked 58th of 59 running backs, which is wild to me. You know, I mean, I know he had a down year, but he's still definitely a talent for sure. And another most improved would be Charvarius Ward. And I spoke on that earlier about the issues that he dealt with last year and how he could bounce back from his 2024 season. So looking at that, before we do the outcomes, let's do the drop-off candidates for this team. DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. 2 main ones. They're both going to be 31 years old. When does Father Time start to catch up? Not say it's going to be this year, but if I had to choose one, I would be them. X factor for this team. Every team, I try to stay away from the quarterback, but it's definitely the quarterback with them. Like, there is no scenario where the X factor is not the quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts, and them being the focal point of this team and what makes them succeed or fail. They have the good thing is, like I said, with the Jags, is every team that's ranked below them, they have a ground floor that is better than everyone else's, but the QB is going to be the person that holds them back 100% or takes them to the next level, and next level being 8-7, 9-8, something like that. So we shall see. So to finish up the Colts, best case scenario, the best outcome that is realistic in my opinion would be Anthony Richardson finally shows some slight improvement, or Daniel Jones, either one of them. I don't care who it is. And they could be a top 20 quarterback. If they're a top 20 quarterback, this team adds 4 or 5 wins to what their expected number is for sure. Jonathan Taylor bounces back with that somewhat competent quarterback play. One of those 3 aforementioned receivers takes that next step, becomes a top 20-ish wide receiver in the NFL, top 20, 25. I don't know. Defense is also improved. I mean, the bar is also low for this defense. Another best case scenario is that Houston cannot protect CJ Stroud, like I mentioned earlier, and the Texans cannot win a game. Defense reverts back. I know they added some more talent. Jesus Christ, that team is ridiculous. Added Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. But anything's possible. So, I mean, would it shock me if they were not able to win games due to the lack of protection on CJ Stroud? No. And then the Colts have a pathway to winning this division at 9-8 or something like that, 10-7. They could do it. Worst case scenario, there's no answer at quarterback. Jonathan Taylor is stuck in the backfield because they have 11 people in the box because there's no point of the opponents defending the pass because they're not passing accurately, to say the least. Wide receivers can't do anything because the quarterback play is awful. Cam Bynum was a system player in Minnesota under Brian Flores. Charvarius Ward does not bounce back from where I think he could be going into 2025. The age catches up to the defensive interior, and now they have a top 10 pick going into 2026 at 5-12, and they don't have a quarterback. So, I mean, that's worst case scenario that is realistic. My expectation for this team is that you have the mid-off of the century between Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. They're competing to be who can be the most mediocre of the two. Jonathan Taylor is above average. Someone takes somewhat of a minor step at minimum up in that wide receiver room. Likely Alec Pierce, if I had to guess, if he's still there. The defense is somewhat improved on the back end. I don't know that it's going to be greatly improved, but it's definitely going to be somewhat improved. And they're fighting for that wild card position against the Jacksonville Jags in this division at 9-8, possibly 10-7. Wouldn't necessarily surprise me. So we'll see what happens. Like I said, they're ranked 23rd as of right now. A lot of it's depending on the quarterback play. We go back to these rankings. Let's go back to the rankings real quick. So we have 7. We've done 10 teams now. Out of these 10 teams, how many of them have a franchise quarterback? Titans, no. Browns, no. Giants, no. Raiders, arguable with Geno Smith. Saints, no. Patriots, yes. Panthers, I'd say yes, but you could argue differently. Jets, no. Jaguars, arguable with Trevor Lawrence. Colts, no. So the two teams, one team with a for sure franchise quarterback in the Patriots. Outside of that, you have the Raiders, Panthers, Jags. So all these teams, there's a theme that if you don't have a quarterback, you cannot be good in the NFL. That's why all these teams are ranked so poorly right now. And I mean, the Patriots with their franchise quarterback going forward, they have so many holes. We're gonna talk about Stephon Diggs in a minute. But back to Indianapolis. That's where I have them. See what happens. Not the highest of expectations, but crazier things have happened. Look at what the Commanders did last year after having no protection and Sam Howell 2 years ago and making it to the NFC Championship in 2024. So, end of the episode, we are going to do what I call the final rundown, where I hit these topics of interest around the league and finish it up with Buffalo Bills related news. This is a Buffalo Bills network, Do Media. If you are a fan of the Buffalo Bills or want to hear more about the Buffalo Bills, you definitely go follow them at Do Champions on every social media platform, and you will get more than enough Buffalo coverage and analysis, breakdown, whatever you need for the Buffalo Bills. Just had their new signing, Michael Hoyt, in on a show last week, so be sure to check that out as well. So, first thing, take a sip of water. The New York Giants quarterback situation. If you've missed the news over the past week, they have signed Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson. Kind of surprising to me that they signed both of them, but I don't think it prevents them from still taking a quarterback at 3. Russell Wilson's on a 1-year contract. I think it's like $10 million guaranteed, I want to say. Could be much higher with incentives. Jameis Winston is on a 2-year, $8 million, so it's not like they're financially obligated to roll with these two quarterbacks. Jameis is going to be the backup. He was signed first, but still will be the backup. Even if he plays, Malik Neighbors' value skyrockets based on what he had in the quarterback room last year. In the three games, Jameis Winston had 7 starts last year in Cleveland. Out of those 7 games, 3 of them he had 300-plus yards. 1 game he had 497 yards. So he is a gunslinger to the max. He's pushing the ball 100%. In those 7 starts last year, 292 pass yards per game, 7.2 yards per attempt, and almost an 80 passer rating. It was so low because he's going to throw the ball, but he's also going to commit the turnover with the interceptions. You compare that 292 pass yards per game to the other Cleveland quarterbacks last year, and they had 138 pass yards per game. Deshaun Watson, awful. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, one of the worst quarterback seasons in recent history, NFL history. I don't know. I mean, his depth of target is god-awful. They had 6 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. When you look at Russell Wilson, he's come out and stated that he's going to be the week 1 starter, which I assume to be the case. Kind of the same scenario that he walked into with Pittsburgh with the confirmation orally anyways that he is going to be the starter. The quarterback room last year for New York Giants had 15 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 3,200 pass yards, and a 75 rating. Russell Wilson had better numbers than that and will have better numbers than that in New York this year. He was ranked. Here's why Malik Neighbors' stock still goes up for a multitude of reasons, but one mainly. Russell Wilson was ranked second in passer rating in passes that were 10 plus air yards. His passer rating was 121.2, second best in NFL last year. With all that said, like I mentioned earlier, they are still a go for Shador or Jackson Dart. They could get Shador at 3. Should they take him at 3? That's a whole nother discussion situation. What would be even better is if they move up. I believe they have 2 second-round picks. Take those 2 seconds and move back into the end of the first round. And if Jackson Dart is still there at 20 or a little bit later, you take him then. Get that 5th-year option on him, if that's who you think your quarterback of the future could be. Moving on, Rodgers update. That is Aaron Rodgers. I mean, this drags out. It's almost hard to talk about it. So it's down to, it's still 4 teams because Minnesota had come out and said or basically said that J.J. McCarthy was going to be their quarterback going into 2025, and they were done with Aaron Rodgers, not moving forward with him. But now it's still, there's speculation, circulation that Rodgers could still be in the mix for the Vikings. So a little unsure of what's going on there. Second most unlikely place is Cleveland. I don't think he's going to take that much of a pay cut to go play there. I don't think that's happening. It's a possibility, but I'm just saying teams that don't have a quarterback. Tennessee Titans, they don't have a quarterback, but they just signed Tim Boyle. So they have 3 quarterbacks on the roster now. I don't think they're going for Aaron Rodgers. They're probably going Cam Ward regardless. So the one that sticks out and will probably be the outcome is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They don't have a quarterback. He met with them earlier this week or late last week, and nothing has come of it yet, but I will be curious to see how that plays out because I feel like if he does not sign in Pittsburgh, he may hang it up and call it quits for his career. What's the point of still playing for any of these other teams if it's not Pittsburgh? I don't think it's going to be Minnesota. But Stephon Diggs, 3-year, 69. I have 70 million. 3 years, basically $70 million contract for this guy, which was absolutely ridiculous when you look at his numbers over the last 2 years. It seems like he's falling off a cliff. He's getting older. He's 31. The good thing is they basically have an out after 1 year. I think it's like around a 1 year, $20 million-ish contract. So they can get out. $26 million guaranteed. The Patriots had money to spend, and they had to overpay to get Drake May some help because prior to this they had Pop Douglas and Mac Hollins as their wide receiver 1 going into 2025. So, I'm a little curious to say the least, but see what happens. So, the remnants of free agency that's left. Bring this up. So, if you can make this out, this is the best available. I kind of have them ranked with each position. As far as free agency goes, you got your quarterbacks that's left. Aaron Rodgers, just discussed what's going to happen with him. Kirk Cousins, there's no way he's going to be a $40 million backup. So, he's basically a trade candidate because Atlanta has to move on from him because if they keep him in Atlanta with Michael Penix and Michael Penix struggles, you may hear the Dirty Birds start yelling for Kirk Cousins to come back in. Would have to get really bad, but you don't want that there for your young quarterback. Tyler Huntley still out there, a serviceable backup. Saw that in Miami last year. Joe Flacco come in, throw for 400 one game, throw for 14 interceptions the next game. Running backs, J.K. Dobbins, definitely serviceable for sure. Injury history, but did look better last year. Nick Chubb, I don't know what's left in the tank for him at this point in his career. Wide receivers, we still have Garrett Wilson. That's a possible trade target. I don't know that he will be traded. but his name has been thrown around as a trade possibility for the New York Jets. So definitely the top option if you can trade for him. Amari Cooper still out there, had a down year, I would say, in Buffalo. Not as good as he used to be in Cleveland, those a few years ago whenever he was doing much better. Elijah Moore, also Cleveland wide receiver. Keenan Allen, who is still, even though he's early 30s, was he 32, 33? He's looked that age since he was 22, 23, but he had a solid season last year. I want to say he had around like 70 catches, 800 yards, and like 6 or 7 touchdowns. So he is definitely a viable option if you need a wide receiver 2 on a wide receiver needy team. Maybe like the Titans. I mean, if they bring in Cam Ward, give him the best chance to succeed, you pair him with Calvin Ridley. Do they kind of overlap in their skill set? I would say that's possible, but definitely serviceable. I mean, I think I have him 4th on this list, but he could definitely be 2nd as far as wide receiver talent goes. Deontay Johnson's on here, but I mean, you have to be absolutely desperate if you plan on signing him after him going from Pittsburgh to Carolina to Baltimore to Houston, all in the last calendar year. Seems like a locker room cancer per the reports. Tight end, there's really only one reasonable name left. Tyler Conklin was left, but he went to the Chargers. I mean, how much help does Justin Herbert need in Los Angeles? It's a joke because he has 0 weapons around him, and they do everything and anything to prevent him from having any weaponry outside of Lad McConkey. Anyways, Gerald Everett is the only tight end that's worth mentioning that's available. Offensive line, Tyron Smith still there. Brandon Scherf, who came from the Jags last year, still available. Jedrick Wills Jr. was better in prior seasons, but has taken a tumble down as of late. You have Will Hernandez and Dalton Reisner. Sorry. As far as defensive side of the ball, I mean, they've kind of come out and said they're trying to negotiate a long-term deal with Trey Hendrickson, but they told him he could find his trade partners or see what the trade market was for him. So he's obviously option number 1 as far as defensive linemen go. Von Miller's out there. Still had an okay season last year in Buffalo. Matt Judon, I think his time has passed. It was kind of crazy whenever the Patriots let him go, but he didn't do anything in Atlanta. Dennis Gardeck is there as a free agent, and Charles Omenihu, who was in KC last year, injured a little bit. Defensive tackle, Calais Campbell. I mean, he's a top talent as far as free agency goes. He still was very productive last year in Miami. I think he's waiting to see if there is a potential top-tier team that he could get added to. I don't think he'd come back for a team that's not playing for anything. John Kaminsky from Detroit. Inside linebackers, you have Eric Kendricks, who played for Dallas last year, Kaiser White, and EJ Speed, who was on the Colts that we talked about earlier. Cornerback, still a few good names. Rasul Douglas, Asante Samuel Jr., Mike Hilton, Stephon Gilmore, and Kendall Fuller. Safety, you have Justin Simmons and Julian Blackmon. So, I mean, there's still some of the original top 100 talents left. I would say Justin Simmons, Asante Samuel Jr., Rasul Douglas, Calais Campbell. Who else? Who else was on the offensive side that would be a top 100? Aaron Rodgers, Amari Cooper, Tyron Smith, Brandon Scherf. Those would be top 100 original free agents for the season, for the offseason. And lastly, to end the episode, we'll talk about Buffalo and their draft needs. So I had them, not being a homer for this network, whenever I did my offseason rankings, I had the Buffalo Bills ranked as number 1. They did so much to improve this. To improve this offense. I say the offense, the entire team in the offseason. They've added the likes of Josh Palmer. They bring back DeMar Hamlin, Joey Bosa on a 1-year contract, Larry Ogunjobi in the defensive line, They extend Greg Rousseau. They extend Khalil Shakir. They extend Terrell Bernard. They extend Josh Allen. All these contracts are outstanding. Shows what Brandon Beane can do as a GM. So with all that said, what do they need going into the draft? One thing that could be a need is running back. And that's mostly due to the fact that James Cook has kind of gone above and beyond with his persistence of asking for a new contract to be a top 5 paid running back in the league when he necessarily does not deserve it at this point in his career. His numbers, he had his best year last year in 2024, sorry, but he is not worth Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor money at this point, especially when running backs come a dime a dozen and you can always get them in the draft. So if it weren't for his constant requests for a new contract, they wouldn't be needing a new running back, but it's definitely worth them looking into it. I wouldn't, not the first round, say not even the second round, but mid to late rounds definitely is a need for the Buffalo Bills, in my opinion. I mean, they extended the other players, so I guess he feels like he has to be in on the fun as well. Another one, wide receiver. I talked about the Bills possibly getting Alec Pierce from the Colts as a hypothetical trade. That would be great for them. Big play threat downfield. Obviously, Josh Allen could definitely link up with that downfield play. But going into the draft, it depends on what side of the fence you are on as far as the Keon Coleman. Is he going to be better in year 2 versus year 1? And it's how confident how confident the Bills are with Keon Coleman making those improvements. I don't think they reach for a wide receiver again. They don't take one in round 1 or 2. I mean, unless somehow by some miraculous way. I mean, do you take Ted McMillan at the end of the first round if you're the Bills? I say yes. I mean, he'd be hard to pass up as a talent. I know they need a defensive lineman in general and probably help in the secondary safety position, but it'd be hard to pass up if I'm Brandon Beane. Probably need to shore up that offensive line in the draft for sure. And like I said a few seconds ago, they need to add more possibly depth to that edge rusher and defensive interior position. See a lot of mocks, them taking a defensive lineman in general late in that first round for sure. And then they also need safety help. They brought back DeMar Hamlin and Derek Forrest basically to have the same scenario as Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. Have a mid-off, see who's the best player at that position, and you get the starting position, both basically on one-year contracts going forward into 2025. So, I mean, do the Bills need a lot? Absolutely not. They are basically saying outside of injuries, there is no excuse for the Bills to not win the championship this year, this year for sure. They have the talent. Could they use more talent? Absolutely. But as of right now, they have a top 3 quarterback in Josh Allen. They have great talent in the running back room. They have serviceable wide receivers. Khalil Shakir is obviously great at what he does. Offensive line is good. Defensive line could be improved, but adding the likes of Joey Bosa and depth and Larry Ogunjobi, having Greg Rousseau, solid. Linebacker play is great. They have some great corners. I mean, Josh Allen can only take them so far. But with that said, they definitely have the opportunity to win the Super Bowl in 2025. So curious to see what they do in the draft, how aggressive they are in the first round and those early rounds to get the players that they want. So that'll do it for this week's episode of Chasing Data. We have made it through 10 teams out of the 32 in the NFL. We will continue going forward with these power rankings each and every week. We will have 1 week or maybe 2 weeks where we discuss the draft in detail. probably do a mock draft for sure. I have about 3 more episodes where I'm going to do 2 teams per episode. But after that, it's going to be, once I get to the top 16, each week is going to be solely focused on that one team and doing an even more deeper dive on said team for teams 16 through 1. And this will actually take us to the beginning of preseason, where we'll be looking forward to the 2025 season and who's going to do what for the next year. But if you watched, appreciate you watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to Do Champions on YouTube. Follow Do Champions on every social media platform. And please give me a follow on X, Instagram, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, TikTok, where all this statistical data is laid out each and every day on repeat multiple times a day, helping you keep up with what's going on in the NFL on a more analytical basis versus the very topical data that you get elsewhere on social media. So until next week, appreciate you stopping by. Catch you then.